of the recent past really unimaginable before they happened? Should their consequences really have been unthinkable to us before we lived through them? Let me tell you a story. In early January 2020, when the pandemic was first appearing on people's radar, I started getting a lot of interesting emails and text messages that all said something like this. Jane, didn't you run a simulation of a respiratory pandemic? What do you make of what's going on right now? What should we be doing? These messages were coming not just from my friends and family, but from top executives at the biggest Silicon Valley tech companies, from government agencies, from international foundations. And they were right. Yes, I had run a pandemic simulation. I'm a game designer, and I specialize in creating simulations that help people imagine the biggest global challenges we might face in the future. In 2008, I was the lead designer for a 6-week future forecasting simulation called Superstruct. The simulation was run by the 10-year forecast group at the Institute for the Future in Palo Alto, California. Our goal was to map out the full range of economic, political, social, and emotional ripple effects of global threats like pandemics. We set the game 11 years in the future, in the fall of 2019. During this game, nearly 10,000 people worldwide simulated living through 5 different threats, including a global outbreak of a fictional virus called REDS, short for respiratory distress syndrome. There were no mathematical computations involved in our simulation. Instead, we simply asked people to predict how they personally would feel and what they would do in their own lives during this kind of rapidly spreading outbreak. How would they change their daily habits? What social interactions would they avoid? Could they work from home? Would they choose to self-quarantine? And if so, when, why, and for how long? During a government-mandated quarantine, what problems might they experience? What kinds of support and resources would they need? How would they try to help others? Our simulation was low on algorithms, but high on social and emotional intelligence. Our participants told thousands of stories about what they personally would do during a respiratory pandemic, which we collected and analyzed online. When the novel coronavirus first came to global attention in early 2020, I thought the most important findings to share with the world from our massively multiplayer simulation would be the predictions that people had made. For example, one of my main research questions had been, under what circumstances would people resist voluntary quarantine and social distancing? Our data showed the most likely super-spreading risks would be religious services, followed by weddings and funerals. People were likely to continue participating in these activities no matter what the perceived risks. And we saw clearly that if they were young and single, people still wanted to go out to nightclubs and parties, even if these gatherings were illegal. Based on our findings, early in February 2020, I held an Ask a Futurist public webinar with my colleague at the Institute for the Future, Vanessa Mason. We gave our best urgent advice for the newly unfolding pandemic that barely had a name yet. For example, data suggests that if you lead a religious congregation or community of any kind, you need to plan now to create a space for virtual religious worship. And if you're planning a wedding, professional conference, or networking event or party, you should proactively cancel it now because people will risk their health to attend these affairs even during a pandemic. The headlines that followed in the months after clearly proved these insights from our simulation to be both useful and actionable. During the real pandemic, people did what our players predicted they would do during our simulation. They held large weddings despite rules against it.